Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. I'm not sure if this is exactly what you are meaning, but I will give it a go. Several years ago, I was working for a fairly large retailer. They were situated in an old building. They had been there for a few decades, I believe. There were 4 main floors, stories, 2 customer floors, a colleague and admin floor, and a warehouse on the top floor. The glitch appeared on the admin floor, in one of the less-used corridors. One end of the corridor was the main admin and colleague areas, the main lift, elevator, and staircase, staff room and toilets. On the other end of the corridor was a seldom-used lift that took you to the back of the sales floor. It wasn't as big as the main lift and didn't really have much use unless the other one was broken or in use, as you would have to walk all around the corridors to get to anywhere useful. The only thing in the corridor itself was a plant room. A room containing all the air conditioning, heating, and electrical equipment, and just used to store unusual fixtures and fittings that didn't get used often. So the corridor wasn't used that much. It wasn't well lit, but not so dim you couldn't see anything. Here comes the glitch, and it's hard to describe. Walking past one specific point, I would see. Well, that's the question. I don't know exactly. If you are a gamer, you will likely have seen something like it while playing a game. You know when an object or element doesn't appear quite right, or where a character or object spawns somewhere it shouldn't. You often get a blur or a line in the wrong place. It will only appear when looking at it from a certain angle or from a certain place. Well, this was exactly like that. Every time I walked past this one spot on the corridor, I would see what I can only describe as a line, near the wall but not on the wall, in the air as if it was attached to the roof with an invisible fitting. A perfectly straight line. It looked like maybe about 5 or 6 centimeters long. It would catch my eye every time I walked past. Always in exactly the same place. It would always catch my eye in the same spot, about a foot away, I guess. I would examine the spot and look for it, but could never see it up close, whatever it was. I examined the walls and ceiling, looking for some explanation, a crack in a tile, or something that would reflect the light or, well, anything to explain it. I thought it might be a spider's web dangling down. That would explain why it appeared to be hovering in the air, but it wouldn't explain why it was exactly straight, or why it was still there years later. I tried looking at it from a different angle. I tried walking down the corridor in the opposite direction, and it didn't appear. I tried it up close, far away, higher, lower, but nothing. I tried purposefully trying not to look as I walked past, but it would always catch my eye. Every time. I asked other people if they had seen anything, but nobody had. It really was like a graphics glitch in a video game, and it only appeared to me. And it drove me mad with curiosity. Story 2. Yeah, after some thought, I do remember something that seemed to be a glitch in the Matrix. This happened at the Greenwood Mall in Toledo, Ohio. To anybody reading this who is old and lived in Toledo around half a century ago, remembering something that happened at this retail location obviously dates me. This was probably around 1978, and it was the closest real shopping from where I was living. I was walking toward the mall to shop, and on the way I noticed a luxury car on my left. I've long since forgotten the make, but I noticed that the hood bonnet had a very strange shimmery look enough to catch my eye. I walked up the car, and it still had that weird appearance, even up close. I was beyond curious, and I had to gently lower my hand toward the surface of the car. My hand never touched the surface, out of respect for this obviously meticulous and elegant print job on an expensive car, but my hand was surely within a couple centimeters of the metal. It looked as though my hand was immersed into some weird translucent, three-dimensional metallic ambience, and some of the surrounding paint appeared to be closer than my hand, and other parts looked like they were farther away than my hand, and these amorphous layers were in the same places. Of course, this was impossible. To this day I've never understood what I was seeing. Nothing else looked like Trat. More recently, like only about 3 weeks ago, I went to one of the men's yoga events here in Chicago. Most of the event involved an ocean drum, which is a large double membrane with encased ball bearings which sound like ocean waves as the instrument is moved, and resonant crystal bowls. Most of the session was the sound bath from the bowls, which have various pitches. This is obviously a thing because I'm not the only person at these events who experiences this, but logic would tell me that the sound should always come from the direction of the bowls. That is not the case at all. The sound is stereo, alternating between the bowls and elsewhere in the room. All of my logic and all my thoughts about acoustics tell me this should be impossible, and no amount of thought about it makes the slightest sense to me. I also can't find anything about this strange effect on the internet, There was nothing in the wrong part of the room, not speakers, or anything else that should make the bowl sounds keep switching back and forth to and from that side of the room. The event host told me later that I should just relax with the flow, which was wonderful, rather than working so hard to analyze it, lol. Story 3. Oh yes, something I can't explain till this day baffled me and my daughter's mother as we were heading back from dropping my oldest son medicine, that he had 2 years left of college, and was working with the public and always falling sick, so I had to go check on him, and make sure he was okay in order for me to be okay. If y'all a parent, y'all definitely understand. As we were heading back to our town, which is about 30 miles away, we were at the midway point. I was driving, and the guy was sitting in the passenger side laying back with his right arm bent, and his head leaning on it as we approached a red light and stayed parked for at least 10 seconds. Out of nowhere, something hit the car so hard it shook me up and I was dazed. He started yelling on my arm is broken. Ooh shit, it took me a minute to make sure he was okay and look at my surroundings and focus on the now. Not seeing anyone or vehicle in view, I took a right and got off the main right end, pulled over, exited the vehicle, and there was not a mark on it and still no vehicle in sight or person. Also, the small car we were in I thought definitely would have been smashed in somewhere, plus the heavy impact. I still don't know what happened. When we returned home and I mentioned it to my other son, and as he examined the car, he was in all like, really, there's not a mark on or nothing under, or on top, I think thinking face y'all tripping, LMAO, so what was it? And has anyone else experienced an incident similar? Story 4. My reading glasses were on my nightstand. I remember very clearly because that's where I always keep them, same spot, every single night. I set them down there before I go to sleep, so that when I wake up, they're right within reach. But the other day, when I went to grab them, they were gone. Completely gone. At first, I figured they must have slipped behind the nightstand. That's happened with my phone before, or sometimes a pen. I pulled the stand away from the wall and crouched down, expecting to see them wedged in the dust or tangled in the cord from my lamp. But nope, nothing. Just some lint and the corner of an old receipt. That was when the annoyance kicked in. Glasses don't just vanish, right? I searched my room like I was doing a police investigation. I lifted up the sheets, shook out my blanket, looked under the bed, checked my pillowcases, even opened up drawers I hadn't touched in weeks. I kept thinking, okay, I probably set them down somewhere else without realizing it. They've got to be here. But no matter how many times I retraced my steps, they just weren't turning up. What makes this worse is that I really need those glasses. I don't have the money right now to replace them, and reading without them is like trying to focus on words underwater. So there's this little sting of panic sitting in the back of my mind, mixed with the frustration of knowing I didn't move them. It feels like they were just taken. And here's the funny part. I'm a mod on this sub, so I see a ton of stories like this. People submit accounts of objects disappearing all the time. Usually it's small things, keys, wallets, jewelry, favorite mugs, toys, you name it. Some of the stories are short and simple. I lost this, looked everywhere, and then one day it was back where it should have been. Others are more drawn out, with people tearing their houses apart looking for something only to find it years later, sitting in plain sight. I've noticed a pattern in these stories. Most of the time, the item doesn't stay gone. It comes back, but in this weird, almost mischievous way. Someone will say they searched the living room 10 times, checked every couch cushion, every pocket, and then suddenly their missing remote is just sitting there on the coffee table like it never left. It's as if the universe pressed pause on the object for a while, and then casually dropped it back in their path. Story 5. I got my nose pierced with a piercing gun about 6 weeks ago. Yes, I know, don't come at me. Everybody tells me that's the wrong way to do it. But honestly, it's been healing up really well. Hardly any redness, no weird bumps, nothing like that. The only downside is that the stud they use doesn't have a back on it, so it comes out super easily if I'm not careful. I've been living in constant mild paranoia that I'm going to lose it somewhere and have to scramble to replace it. A couple of weeks ago, my paranoia turned into reality. I was in the shower, just going through my usual routine, not paying as much attention as I should have been. I reached up to wash my face, moved my hand the wrong way, and instantly felt my nose stud slip out. You know that feeling, like a tiny pop, and then you just know it's gone. I looked down and there it was, glinting on the shower floor for half a second, just out of reach. Time kind of slowed down. I tried to grab it, but before I could even move properly, the little thing slid toward the drain, and I watched it disappear through the holes like it was being pulled under. Gone. Just like that. I yanked the shower knob off and crouched down, trying to see if it was still in the drain. I even poked around with my fingers, hoping maybe it was caught on some hair or soap scum, but no luck. It was gone. I stared at the drain for a good 30 seconds like it might spit the piercing back up, but of course it didn't. So dripping wet, I threw on some clothes and made a dash to the nearest store to get a replacement. I knew I couldn't leave the hole empty for long, or it would start closing up. I found a similar stud, stuck it in as soon as I got home, and chalked the whole thing up to bad luck. Lesson learned: be more careful in the shower. Fast forward 2 weeks. Today, I'm lying in bed, scrolling on my phone, when I feel something sharp digging into my hip. At first, I think it's just a crumb, or maybe a stray pin from some sewing project I did months ago. But when I reach under me to pull it out, I freeze. It's my old nose stud, the one I watched go down the drain 2 weeks ago. I just sat there holding it, completely confused. It's unmistakably the same one, same little stone, same slight bend in the stem. It's not like I had 2 of them lying around. This was the stud that vanished. And here's the part that really freaks me out. I live alone. No one else has been in my apartment. I've changed my bedding twice since the day it went missing. I've washed and dried my sheets, remade my bed, and even vacuumed under it. There is literally no logical way this piercing should have ended up poking me in the hip 2 weeks later. I keep running the possibilities through my head. Did it somehow get caught in my towel after the shower, stay hidden for days, and then just magically end up in my bed? Did it stick to my clothes and only come loose now? Maybe it clung to my hair or my skin somehow, though that seems impossible. I can't make the timeline or the physics work. And yet, here it is, sitting in the palm of my hand, like it never left. Story 6. I had a Far Side comic book, maybe 50 pages long. It was one of my favorite books, and as I've always been an avid reader and very thorough, I'm serious, I even read the copyright information. And I had read this book, no joke, maybe close to 100 times. I knew every page by heart, or I thought I did. One evening I was flipping through it to find a certain comic I wanted to read to a friend on the phone. I knew exactly where it was, but before I could reach the page I had in mind, there were suddenly and inexplicably all these others. There were pages and pages that I'd never seen before. A baffling array of comics that I'd never read or so much as skimmed past. This may seem only a small thing, but understand that this book was a personal favorite, beloved and long memorized word for word, suddenly and glaringly wrong. As far as adjectives go, creepy doesn't do it justice. I inspected those pages to see if maybe they'd been stuck together somehow, but could find no sign of that. The unfamiliar cartoons were scattered all throughout the book rather than concentrated in one section. I considered whether or not my long-treasured copy could have been switched with a new version by some friend of mine made prankish by boredom. Distinctively dog-eared pages and my ballpoint pen doodles in specific margins ruled this out. I was a bit frantic, I admit. I called my friend and tried to explain that the pages I was staring at were not supposed to be there. It was surprisingly hard to explain how disturbed I felt. There was just a sense of wrongness slithering up my vertebrae, snaking across my mood. I ended up giving the book away, as eventually the creep factor overwhelmed the enjoyment of curling up with it on a rainy day. I often wish I hadn't though. 2 decades later, I find a good, shivery mystery to be just one more of the curious joys of life. Story 7. My mom was sitting on the couch tonight, and I was standing next to her to the right, with my phone on the armrest. I clicked open my phone to show her something, and quickly typed in my passcode, with the phone still on the armrest. She very casually said, "That's your wedding picture," and pointed to the screen. I asked her what she meant, and she said, "Your lock screen, that's your wedding picture." My lock screen picture is just a picture of some palm trees from my trip to California. My home screen is also just a different picture of trees. I flipped through all of my tabs, and there were no photos open that could have even remotely resembled a wedding picture. When I showed her my lock screen again, the picture of the palm trees, she seemed a bit shocked and said it was weird. She just said, "I saw someone in a wedding dress," after I questioned her another 10 times about it, and eventually dropped it. When she initially said it, I felt like I saw it too. It was the weirdest thing. I feel like I saw it, but it instantly left my memory, and I couldn't remember what the picture looked like. I believe her that she saw it. Could this be a glitch that showed me my future? Story 8. So I have a second cousin, who has been married to his wife for about 20 years. About 7 years ago, I went to a family reunion that he, his wife, and their 2 daughters were at. At one point, I was watching all of the kids, including my own. His daughters' names were Hannah and Haley. I spent time with those girls. I took them fishing. My daughter remembers both of them, because she was the older cousin. About 2 years later, I saw a post on Facebook that they had taken Hannah to Disney World. I was confused because I was like, where is Haley? I have seen and have taken pictures of her. My daughter remembers her. They posted lots of other posts where they were doing stuff with Hannah. So naturally, I asked about Haley, and they both stated that they did not have a daughter named Haley. I remember having a conversation with my cousin's wife about the spelling of their daughter's name. So I went back into my Google Photos to see if I could find pictures of Haley, and she was not there. My daughter had pictures of her in her phone as well, and she was freaked out because they were gone. Like the pictures were still there, but Haley was not in them. No one else in the family remembers her. Even though some of the pictures were of aunts and uncles and cousins with her. It's like somebody photoshopped her out of all the pictures. I am so confused, like what happened to her. How does this child not exist that I remember fishing with? I even asked multiple family members if they knew any child named Haley, because I thought, well, maybe she was somebody else's kid. No one knows who she is, and even my mom states that she does not remember that name. WTH? To answer some questions. I noticed this about 5 years ago. I did do a deep dive into it. I Googled things and people involved. I found other girls with the same name, but none of them were her. I went through old photos. I was convinced something had happened to her, and no one wanted to talk about it. I asked so many other cousins, uncles, aunts, and Haley's grandparents. My daughter had taken a bunch of selfies with her cousins, as they had camped out a couple of nights in the same tent. She was gone from all the pictures, even the one I had had of her and my great aunt of just the two of them. My daughter was 14 at the time. My son was 11, and he doesn't remember Haley either. The girl's dad does in fact boil fish. My cousin's wife did have multiple miscarriages after Hannah, and that's why she said they only have the one child. Maybe she was a ghost? Story 9. Yesterday at 5 p.m., I was playing the new OG map game mode on Fortnite while sitting in a Discord call with my friends. Suddenly, I received a missed phone call from a number with no caller ID. Usually, I don't answer calls from unfamiliar numbers, but I was expecting a call from a job I had applied for. Thinking it might be them, I decided to answer. Upon answering the second call from the same, no caller ID number, I asked, "Hello?" The loud gunshots and SFX from Fortnite made it hard to hear at first, so I removed my headset to listen better. The female voice on the other end sounded like my girlfriend, and her tone seemed offended when I asked who it was. To confirm if it was her, I inquired about the caller ID, and the response matched how my girlfriend would react if she was genuinely confused. She asked to come over, suggesting a Lyft instead of Uber because of a $5 discount I had for the Lyft ride, and also we share the same Lyft and Uber accounts. Despite being surprised by the accurate details, something felt off, especially since she didn't know the driver was even close by. Slightly suspicious, I bought the Lyft but then hesitated when she asked for the money instead so she can buy it herself. This led me to consider a potential AI scam, and so I canceled the ride, especially since she had mentioned not wanting to come home with me earlier that day. Upon calling my actual girlfriend, she denied making any calls, leaving me puzzled. The bizarre encounter left me contemplating the idea of alternate realities intersecting due to her very accurate responses, as no other explanation seemed plausible. Perhaps, in a different universe, or just an AI scam trying to get money from me. It was too coincidental, though, and someone would have to be stalking me to know those things. I do think it's possible, though, that higher versions of ourselves exist with everything we desire, waiting to be manifested through the energy we create around us. Share your thoughts or similar experiences if you've encountered something similar. Story 10. I had something odd happen a couple months ago. I was driving home through the countryside, been commuting for 10 plus years, and I look over and I see 3 windmills and thought to myself, I don't remember there ever being any windmills there. It was a very clear sunny day, and the ground was covered in snow. It bothered me so much I started to look into it. From what I saw, the windmills appeared to be about a mile away. A few days later I looked again in the same spot, and no windmills. I even got on Google Maps to look around the area. No windmills to be found. On another clear day I looked again, and on the horizon, very, very tiny, I could see windmills. I really had to look for them, and never noticed them before while driving. These are about 4 to 5 miles away. So I think what I saw was some kind of atmospheric magnification. I wish I had stopped to take a picture on that one day, because it was very odd. Possibly with water vapor rising off the snow, the sun was hitting the windmills, and that was being magnified through the vapors close to the ground. Kind of like when you see the moon rising over the horizon, and it looks really big. For a little, while I really thought there was a glitch in the matrix. Story 11. It's nearly 1 a.m., and I've been scrolling through these posts for a while now, and some of them are truly captivating, and it triggered an experience that I haven't thought about in over a year. Thought I'd share, as I think it fits the brief. This happened when I am 23, and my sister, F34, were 13 and 23 respectively Saturday morning. I woke up about 10 a.m.-ish. My mom cooked me some breakfast, Scotch pancakes, and we watched an episode of Lost together, while my brother stayed upstairs playing on his PS3, probably FIFA. Around 11:30 a.m., my sister called me and asked if I wanted to meet her at my local shopping center to buy some clothes and just generally have a walk round and have something to eat. I wasn't doing anything and my friends weren't playing out, so I decided to meet her. She took a taxi there and I walked there as it's pretty close to me, or was at the time. We had a generally good time, didn't end up buying any clothes, my sister did. We had a meal at a cafe about 1 p.m. and got an ice cream each afterwards, where you buy a cone and go and make it yourself from the machine, although I broke the machine pin on the lever and got a bit upset because I thought I was going to be made to pay for this, but the manager came over and said it's happened a few times, no biggie. We went to Mr. Sim's old-fashioned sweet shop and bought some sweets, weighed them up, and paid for them. Going home, my sister ordered a taxi in, but this time, I got in, the taxi dropped me off at home, and she stayed in and went home. She was living with her friend at the time. Generally good day. I played some FIFA with my brother when I got home, ended up having a bit of an argument with him, then made up, had some supper in the evening, and watched Saturday Night Takeaway, and your generic Saturday TV. All in all, a pretty normal and uneventful day. Except this day didn't happen. At least not to anyone but me and my sister. I mentioned me breaking the ice cream machine to my mom. She thought I was joking. I explained that, at the cafe today, when we had food I broke the pin on the lever. I'll never forget the way she looked at me. She looked worried, but slightly questioning, waiting for me to say I'm joking. She said I left the house once today, and it was to go to the chip shop, to bring back egg fried rice and curry for me, my brother, and mum. And it took about 15 minutes. At no point did I leave for hours, and when I did leave, it was about 2 p.m. I remember calling my sister, panicking at this point and needing to prove that I did actually go and meet her. She answered, slightly sleepy by this point, as it was about 11 p.m. before this conversation occurred, and asked her what we did today on loudspeaker. She went through the exact same story I've just told my mum, including the ice cream machine, including what she bought, and including what sweets I got from Mr. Sim's. At this point I ran up to my room and brought the remaining sweets down to prove that I bought these today and went to the shopping center. My mom at this point had tears in her eyes, hoping I guessed that this was some prank me and my sister had conjured up. Me and my sister agreed to talk about it tomorrow, but texted me afterwards, asking if Mum's alright. I said yeah, and if she's not, neither is my brother because he's promising me that at the time I was out, he was playing FIFA with me in his room. Tomorrow comes, and my sister calls me in a panic, claiming that her boss sent her home from work because she got called in yesterday instead. She said that her boss said he called her yesterday morning and asked to cover someone's shift, and she can have Sunday off, essentially just swapping a shift, which she agreed to. She said she didn't push him too much because she didn't want him to think she was mental and lose her job. To this day, our mom, brother, and even my sister's now ex-roommate are wholeheartedly convinced that the day me and my sister spent together didn't happen. She no longer has contact with her old boss, but he paid her for the Saturday despite not working Sunday, and me and my sister can recall tiny details to each other about the day we had. Over the years this has generally drifted into the background, but sometimes gets brought up now and again, and has become something that's almost taboo to talk about in our family because of the issues it caused around the time. This turned out to be a lot longer than I expected, but never had the opportunity to share this in a place where it actually seems to fit. Story 12. I'm pretty sure everybody must have come across some "how did that happen?" moments, like thinking about a song and the song starts playing in radio in the next few minutes. Provide a wrong name by mistake, but the listener still ends up writing the correct name, expecting rain on a sunny day, and it does rain, etc. But there are two incidents which happened years apart in my life, which made me pinch myself to confirm if I was awake or was it just a vivid lifelike dream. Incident 1. I believe it was during my 7th or 8th grade. The teacher enters the classroom, and she asks the class leaders to go to the staff room and bring the midterm test notebooks. I feel really pissed off as to why she teacher, wants to distribute the notebooks once again and express this to my friends sitting with me. They all give a puzzling look and mention that she has not announced the marks earlier. I am pretty confident that I had gone through my evaluated notebook, and I even inform that I had scored just 19. I am even able to tell the marks scored by all my friends, and also who topped the class, scoring 24.5 on 25 in the test. My friends are confused, and by this time, the class leaders are back with the test notebooks and start distributing them. My friends and I have scored exactly what I said earlier. My friends are confident that I had snuck into the staff room and had looked into the marks. I have no memory of doing that, nor I had a necessity to do that. The worst part was I have a vivid memory of discussing about the answers, going through the notes with my friends, and I was also able to point a silly mistake which my friend did, because I have memory of discussing about that too. When I think about this now, I have two different set of incidents in my memory. Incident 2. This incident would feel more like a coincidence, but I cannot convince myself that this was just a coincidence. I start to office in my motorbike, and on the way I come across a guy asking for lift. I pick him up and drop him at a signal, and he mentions he will get his college bus near the signal before getting down. When I'm still waiting for the lights to turn green, an old man comes to me, asking me if I can drop him at Liberty, a major landmark in my city. It was right on the way, so I pick him up. While nearing Liberty, he asks me how far is railway station from where I will drop him. I reply that in fact, I am going to railway station, and I will drop him at railway station entrance. He is happy. I drop him and go ahead to parking. All fine till now. The very next day, I start pretty late to my work. At the same place where I picked up the college student the other day, he is asking for lift again. I stop and pick him up. We both are surprised at the coincidence. He gets down at the same signal joking that the next day he's planning to start at 7.30. Now begins the weirdest part. The same old man comes to me at the traffic signal, asking me to drop him at Liberty. The best part was he did not recognize me, and he asks the same question about distance to railway station. I drop him at railway station just like the previous day, but pretty much confused. What are the chances of seeing two random strangers in the same order at the same place on 2 consecutive days, at different time of the day? I had started at least 1.5 hours late the second day, but still I ended up meeting the same 2 strangers. Story 13. So this thing happened with me today morning, and it freaked the daylight out of me. So a brief backstory before we move on to the actual event. Well, I've been preparing for competitive exams, and as such I have to write my weekly tests every Sunday morning. And today I had to appear for an aptitude test. Now, just a few weeks ago, an old friend of mine told me that he is also planning to give a shot to these exams, and as such needed some guidance from me, since I am the one with more experience. So back then, I gave a brief summary of the exam pattern and the book lists and other such stuff to him personally. More importantly, I also advised him to enroll for the tests. We didn't have any conversation after that. Now today while I was writing my exam, halfway through it, I saw my friend sitting diagonally opposite me and giving the test. I was surprised in a happy way, and it brought a smile to my face. I looked at him again, and this happened numerous times as I was writing my exam. Same hairstyle. I have even seen him wearing the same jacket earlier as well. There wasn't an iota of doubt in my mind that it was my buddy Abhishek. Ever since I saw him, I couldn't wait for the exam to be over so that I could go and meet him. As such, I was looking at him every now and then throughout the exam. Now the bell in the hall rang, signaling the end of the exam. Naturally, I looked at my friend who was one of the first person in the room to rise from his seat, and he was just sitting 2 rows ahead of me near the doorway. So he stood up, handed his sheet over to the invigilator, and left from the door. Just a few seconds later, I handed over my sheet to the invigilator as well and chased my friend, walking out the same doorway he left from. But then the invigilator called me back, just to cross-check if one of the sheets that had fallen down belonged to me. I declined, but this interruption hardly lasted few seconds. So I continued walking again, and towards the main exit, which led outside the main complex onto a road. I turned my head left, and turned it right, but my friend had vanished into thin air. I dialed his number up right away. And this is how our conversation went. Me bro. Where did you go? Him what? Me. I just saw you leaving the exam hall. You have enrolled for the classes, right? And you didn't tell me? Him what? I am sitting at home bro. I haven't joined in yet. I went silent for a few seconds, just trying to comprehend what did just happen to me. Him hello. Are you there? What happened bro? Me sad-faced to avoid sounding like a lunatic, I avoided it. Nothing, bro. I thought I saw you, but might have been someone else. Though I was dead sure, it was him only whom I saw. I'll call you later. Him, okay, bro. I will join the classes soon, though. My mom is calling, we'll talk later. And I could clearly hear his mom calling him in the background. So what had just happened? There could be two possible options. A possibility that my friend was lying to me. But I would negate that since I trust him as I've known him since past 9 years, and he's an intelligent and completely sane person. I even heard his mom calling him out in the background. The second possibility might be that I was hallucinating or I was high. And I would negate all these options too. Because I have never done psychedelic drugs, I don't suffer from PTSD or schizophrenia. I'm only a social drinker and drink occasionally on social gatherings. In fact, I am intelligent and well-read than majority of the people I have known. I'm completely sound, both physically and mentally. Furthermore, my mock exam, which was based on quantitative reasoning, went great, and almost every question of mine was correct. Now, this would have never happened if I wasn't in the right frame of mind. Story 14. When I was young, me and my older brother were talking about something at the bottom of the steps of our house, sitting next to each other. Mind you, the full length of the steps could only fit us two as we sat, so if anyone wanted to get up or down the stairs, one of us had to get up and move to let them pass. So here we are talking, and Mom comes walking downstairs telling us, "Excuse me," so she can get past. I got up, let her past, then sat right back down as she headed to the kitchen. All is good. We talked for at least another 2 minutes or so, nobody having came to access the stairs since then. Then all of a sudden, my mom comes out of her upstairs room and walks, yet again, down the stairs. "Excuse me." By reflex, my brother gets up to let her pass, and as she heads towards the kitchen, and my brother sits back down, I suddenly get a wave of shock across my face. How TF did she get back upstairs? I thought it was just me for like a split second, until I looked at my brother, only to realize that he too was in shock. We both verified each other's confusion by asking what the heck just happened. This was a time before smartphones, and before I had the privilege to play on a Game Boy or some other really distracting gadget. We were both literally just sitting there staring at the wall, talking about random stuff, so we found it very hard to believe we were so deep in imagination or disconnected from reality that we hadn't noticed my mom come back upstairs, but only noticed the 2 times she came downstairs. We were so perplexed we refused to consider that she had taken the stairs to get back up. I went outside to the backyard to see if there was some work she was doing out back, looking for a ladder or something. I mean, this was a 2-story house, with no easy way to the second floor other than the stairs, so there had to be some other explanation, but there was none. No work being done outside, nothing. The scientific side in me understands that this was most likely an extremely rare occasion, where both me and my brother experienced selective attention at the exact same time, which so happened to occur at the exact same time that my mother most likely came to go back upstairs. And I do find it fascinating how neither myself nor my brother remembered getting up to let her pass. Like we were running on extreme autopilot, with no recording of the event whatsoever. My mom had no idea what I was talking about when I asked her about it later. This leaves just a very narrow set of possible conclusions. She took a freaking ladder and climbed up into her bedroom and came back out to go back downstairs. Me and my brother simply just did not register the event of her going back upstairs. Which I find this odd, because the way my brain works, I find it physically impossible to ignore any external stimuli, no matter how small, irrespective of how deep in thought I may be. It's a simulation. Definitely not a compiler error, but a runtime error. Whatever algorithms are used to regulate our spatial positioning in this simulated universe, there was definitely a glitch/bug in that specific method that either teleported my mother back upstairs and erased her memory of the event, or shorted out our memory banks for a few seconds to record the event. Personally, I think number 1 raises the most questions of anything. Story 15. I occasionally see into the future. I'm not kidding. And no, it isn't just me thinking I see into the future. I know I've seen these exact and specific scenarios before. The first time it happened was when I was playing a video game. Except I was asleep. I woke up and forgot about it. Then about a month or 2 later, I was playing that game, and the exact same scenario played out, down to how I moved my camera, who I shot, and how I then died. It was about 10 seconds of the exact same thing before I realized this has happened before, and sort of froze, thinking. I was playing Arma 2 Island Life, and I was facing some police inside a building on the first floor, watching the stairs, just FYI in case anyone was curious, laughing face. Then it started happening more often. Usually it would be either games or school. I'd dream something, and a few months later, it would happen. The most recent one was about 6 months ago. I was sat at my computer, and I looked at my door, and it was one half open, and I then looked at my computer, and it was YouTube and Quora. Then, a few months later, that exact scenario happens. I don't know why it happens, and even though I asked a Quora question on it, all the answers people gave me were of locations or patterns which are common, but these were incredibly specific events, which, since it's happened at least 10 times, couldn't just be luck. So yeah, that's my glitch in the matrix. Story 16. I've been in my apartment for about 5 months. Recently I was gone for about 2 weeks. When I went to take a shower, I turned the water on, but it never got hot. It was almost 5 p.m., so I called maintenance right away, so they could fix it before they left for the day. I figured it was something with the water heater, and that, while I probably could relight the pilot or whatever, if I was wrong then I'd have to wait for the next day. Anyway, they showed up and quickly determined that the water heater was fine, and I had hot water in every water outlet, but the master tub/shower. So since I had a second shower, they scheduled to come back the next day. The control on the master tub/shower is a simple rotating handle, cold at the beginning and hot when rotated the whole way. They came back the next day and took it apart and determined that the cartridge inside was backwards, so that it was hot when you first turned it on and cold when it was turned all the way. So they put in a new handle, not sure precisely why they didn't just reverse the cartridge, but whatever, I actually liked the old handle better. And now the control works perfectly fine. But how in the world did I live here for 5 months and not realize the water control was backwards? There is no way. I use that shower every day. I know how they are supposed to work. I use it without even thinking about it. I can't imagine someone sneaking in while I was gone and reversing the cartridge. Just maybe there is a way that it could reverse on its own, but that seems mechanically very unlikely. Glitch seems far more likely. Story 17. This story happened last year. That afternoon I was at the airport and ordered a taxi online to take me home. The taxi driver called me, and because the airport was so noisy, I walked to a quiet place so I could hear his voice well. He picked me up in a car that had 3 rows of seats. I put my suitcase in the second row and sat beside the suitcase. We chatted the whole drive. In the middle of the chat, he suddenly asked if my son was asleep because his voice was no longer heard. I thought I heard it wrong, so I didn't answer, and we talked about other things. When we arrived, I opened the door and got off with my suitcase and said goodbye to him. He asked me, "Where is your child?" I said I have no children, and his face went pale. He immediately got down and checked the back seat, and indeed there was no child there. He panicked and said when he called me he heard a child's voice chattering faintly. I was alone there. I walked far enough that the closest person was still very far from me. There were no children around when he called. Before I got into the car, he saw a small boy getting into the car. But when I was inside, he was confused because he didn't see the boy and thought maybe the boy was lying on his back in the 3rd row, so he couldn't see it from the front. Then when he asked me why the boy didn't speak anymore, because the first few minutes he sometimes still heard laughter, because I didn't answer, he thought that the boy was asleep. I don't know if he was playing a prank on me or not, but he looked really scared. His hands were cold and shaking. Story 18. About 12 years ago, I met a guy online, and we started talking. I will call him Ned. At this time, I was in a very lonely point in my life. Ned seemed nice and was very attentive, which I welcomed. He and I talked a lot over the phone and text over several days. Then we agreed to meet in person. On the day we had agreed to meet, I rode the subway, about a 45-minute ride, over to his city. We were supposed to meet at the station and then go to dinner at a nearby restaurant that we could walk to and see if there was a rapport in person. As soon as I got on the subway, I couldn't shake an uneasy feeling which was starting to come over me. Each stop, I got a bit more sense of dread. I wondered if it was normal first date nerves or something else. I sent Ned a text telling him I was on my way. He replied when I was almost there and said that he instead wanted to go somewhere private when I arrived and made a sexual reference. This really worried me since I did not know him well yet. As the subway rode on, I considered whether to go through with meeting him or not. Soon, I was at the stop where I had agreed to meet Ned. I got off the train. I had a view of the parking lot past the gates, and I looked out. I saw Ned, recognizing him from the photo, waiting for me. Then all of a sudden, my brother called me out of the blue. I answered. My brother asked me what I was doing right now. I told him that I had been planning to meet someone, but was considering calling it off. My brother said that he had called because for some reason, he had suddenly gotten the feeling that I was in trouble, and that he should call me immediately and find out what was going on. My brother does not normally do this. I had not told my brother or anyone else about Ned, nor had I told anyone else that I was going to meet him, or where I was going at all that night. I still have no logical explanation for how my brother knew that something was wrong. My brother has an uncanny way of knowing certain things sometimes, in ways that even he cannot explain. When he called me, I decided not to meet Ned. I texted Ned and told him I'm sorry. I cannot meet you. I don't feel right about this. As it turned out, there was good reason not to meet with Ned. He was really a jerk about the whole thing, and sent me several insulting, sexist, disparaging, and guilt-tripping texts in the few days following. He seemed like someone who would have likely been an abuser, and maybe he was dangerous. I'm not sure how my brother knew, but it seems that this glitch in the matrix was helpful. Story 19. This may just have been some very odd hallucination, but if so, it was a one-off. I've never knowingly hallucinated on any other occasion in my life. Once, when I was at university, I was in the TV room of my student house, late at night, admittedly rather tired, but not intoxicated in any way, when I saw the damnedest thing. I was looking at the scene in front of me, and it was in normal 3D, but suddenly something just flexed. If you imagine a flexible TV screen, so that the picture on the screen is playing normally, but somebody has taken hold of that screen and bent it out of shape, and then back again, as if flexing a thin sheet of cardboard, you'll get the general idea. I suppose it might have been a migraine aura, since I often used to get migraines which involved little or no pain but plenty of weird neurological special effects. But I hadn't really started having migraines at that point, and again, if it was a migraine aura, it was unlike any other migraine aura I ever experienced. My migraines normally involve one or more of the following. An odd feeling as if the surface of my eye is dirty or fogged. If I look at a patterned surface, the pattern moves about. If I look at a plain dark surface in low light, it has little tan tadpoles all over it. Partial paralysis of the left arm. Not giant unseen hands flexing the surface onto which reality is being projected. Also, on one occasion in the mid-1980s, I was waiting at a bus stop in London at dusk, and there was an elderly but spry-looking black man in the bus shelter before me. I looked away for a minute or two, then looked back, and he wasn't there. No car had drawn up to collect him. He wasn't anywhere to be seen on the street. The buildings around us were all closed, and the nearest side road up which he could have disappeared was a long way down the road. It's possible I had dozed off for a few minutes, and in that time he had hailed a taxi, but I certainly wasn't aware of doing so. Story 20. I've now had two glitches. Both freaked me out immensely. One, when I was about 7, 2012, I had a small cat statue and a small dog statue. I painted both, and I, being proud of them, put them on the top of my headboard. One day, about a month afterwards, the dog statue disappeared. My mom couldn't explain how it happened either. There was no way it could have been knocked into the trash, and so we just said that it slipped behind my bed or something. We moved all of my furniture about 3 years later, and lo and behold, it's not there. I still have the cat statue, but thinking about that dog freaks me out still. 2. Just today, 2019, my mom and I went to our local grocery store that we have gone to many times before. We know every employee there, and they usually know us. So, we go to the deli section of this store, and it seems like everybody is staring at us like we did something weird. My mom asked me if anything seemed off, and I, who was kind of freaking out already, agreed. The line, despite only having 2 people in front of us, seemed to take an unusually long time. Meanwhile, while we're waiting, I notice a couple at another side of the deli. They are there for the whole time that we are at the deli, and I see them being handed the same box at least twice. While this is happening, 2 strange workers simultaneously laugh in a very stiff manner and say, "Ha! Ha! Ha!" That makes me laugh. When we finally take our order and get our food, my mom asks for the receipt, and the worker, who we have never seen before, just stares at us before walking away. Before this, while the man was getting food from the back, another worker, one of the laughing ones who we've never seen, stares straight at us and says, "Hi, can I help? Who's next?" And then, without missing a beat, she walks forward a couple of steps and stares at another customer and says, "Hi, can I help? Who's next?" in the same tone. When we got our food and went to the checkout stand, we noticed that, despite it being very busy, the store was almost silent. The checker, who we also didn't recognize, didn't ask us a single question. Not even, "Did you find everything all right?" Then, when we were finally done, the bagger asked, "Can I help you out?" My mom said no, and then, after a moment's pause, he very tonelessly said, "Oh, creepiest experience of my life, and I'm glad that we're out of there now." Story 21. I've experienced several glitches in the Matrix. And the more aware you become of them, the more of them you experience, it seems. One of those occasions was a literal glitch, as seen in the movie The Matrix, when the same black cat crosses Neo's path twice, and it very much made me question the nature of reality. Here's the story. About 12 years ago, I was on a recreational nature path in the small town where we lived at the time. My son and I were down by the river, and he was amusing himself tossing rocks into the water. On the other side of the river, up on a hill, I could see the path meandering along, here and there hidden by groups of trees. I saw several people wander down the path, disappear behind the small group of trees, and then come out on the other side. There was one guy who was remarkable in that he was wearing all beige clothes. He was pretty fair-skinned, and I was thinking what a bad choice of color beige was for someone like him. He wore beige khakis, a beige buttoned shirt, and a beige baseball-type hat. I couldn't completely make out his facial features, but saw that he had a scruffy, short beard. He was strolling from the right to the left, disappeared behind the group of trees, and came out on the other side, and then walking further down the path, disappeared from my view. I looked at my son, who was splashing around in the water, looked back up at the path, and the same guy in the same clothes, with the same hat and beard, came walking from the right to the left. It was spooky. Everything about him was the same, even the way he walked. He again disappeared behind the small group of trees, but this time didn't come back out at the other end. I stared at the path for at least 5 minutes, but he never reappeared on the other side of the trees. A true glitch in the Matrix? Story 22. This is my list of glitches. 1. I was about 15 and really into skateboarding. I was skating at the local primary school when I suddenly got the urge to look at the basketball court. It was an outdoor court, and more specifically to look towards the backboard/ring at one particular end of the court. As soon as I looked at it, the entire backboard and ring assembly fell off the post that was holding it. It was really weird, and I should have gone to investigate why a backboard and ring that had been there for years suddenly decided to fall off just as I looked at it. 2. When I was about 11, me and my friend saw a girl from our school we both liked. As we were young, we thought it would be fun to stalk her and hide behind things so she didn't know we were following her. Anyway, she was about 40 meters in front of us and turned a corner where a house was then blocking her. We quickly ran to the corner and peeked around. This run took about 10 seconds or so, and she was seriously like 400 meters down the road, still just casually walking. We both looked at each other like WTF just happened? 3. I was about 13 and was walking across a sports ground by myself. I suddenly heard intense flapping sounds, like a massive bird was flying at me, and turned around and looked everywhere, and there was not a bird in the sky. 4. When I was about 7, my brother called me into our shared room one night to tell me to come and look at the face floating in the middle of the room. I went in, and sure enough, there was a face, no distinctive features, that was just glowing and floating in the middle of the room. I freaked out and ran out of the room with my brother following closely behind. We went and got my dad to come have a look. However, when we looked back in the room, it was gone. He suggested it was possibly a reflection/light from car headlights coming through the front door, glass panels, that caused it. I accepted this at first, but the next day I realized that from where the front door was located, there was an L-shaped corridor to our bedroom room. So therefore it couldn't have possibly been a reflection or some sort of other light source coming through the front door. 5. Okay, so this one is not my glitch per se. Rather, I think I accidentally caused a coworker's glitch a couple months ago, lol. We were at a meeting on level 7 of the building we work at. I left in a hurry once the meeting had concluded, as I wanted to go to my locker on level 8 and then head back down to ground level to get some lunch. My leader stayed back near the lift foyer doors as he was a little distracted by conversation. I went to hop in the lift and said see ya to my boss. He said bye, and turned away back to his conversation, and I then realized the elevator was going down, not up, so I quickly jumped back out and took the stairs to level 8 and went to my locker. I then quickly went back down the stairs to head towards the ground floor. Now, as I was going back down past the stairwell entry to level 7, my boss came into the stairwell. This would have been like 30 seconds after he saw me get into the lift that was going down, and he was like, WTF just happened? I smiled and kept going down the stairs.